Amy was a quiet, hardworking young woman who had learned the value of resilience from a young age. Living with her father, an honest retired teacher, she saw firsthand the sacrifices he made to give her a better life, even as they struggled with modest finances. Their small house was full of books her father collected, many of which she read by his side as a child, taking in his words about how true wealth came from within and from living with integrity. These teachings stuck with her, but they didn't shield her from the harshness of the world outside their home. Growing up, Amy faced teasing from classmates for her old, sometimes patched clothes, or for the lunches she brought from home that weren't as elaborate as those of her peers. She often put on a brave face, focusing instead on her love for learning and her gratitude for her father's hard work. She knew he would do anything to protect her from life's difficulties, even if it meant going without many comforts himself. She would smile as he shared stories about the past, how he built a good life by keeping his head held high despite his own struggles. Her father was her hero, yet Amy harbored secret dreams of making a life that would allow them to move beyond just getting by. One day, she'd buy a comfortable home for him, and maybe even afford the finer things she knew he'd quietly sacrificed. But with only a high school diploma and working a low-paying job at a local cafe, it seemed impossible. She knew she'd have to find a way out of their circumstances herself. Her ambition felt like a distant dream, yet the desire in her heart kept her determined, even on the hardest days. Amy often imagined herself studying, perhaps in an office with large windows, working towards something greater. But whenever she voiced these dreams to friends or family members, the responses were skeptical. People would gently remind her of how hard life was, how education cost more than she could afford. Even so, she held fast to her father's words, "You may not have riches, but no one can take away your dreams, Amy. They're the seeds of your future." And she trusted those words with all her heart. Every day at the cafe was the same, a blur of orders and faces. Until the day Carl walked in, dressed in expensive clothes and carrying an air of superiority that immediately made Amy feel small. She could tell from his sharp suit and expensive watch that he was wealthy. He was the type who would never struggle to make ends meet, who would never know what it felt like to save pennies. Amy tried to be polite as she took his order, but his sneering eyes never left her. And that day, she would learn what it truly felt like to be humiliated. When Amy approached Carl with his coffee, his eyes narrowed, looking her up and down with an expression that was both amused and condescending. She felt the heat rising to her cheeks, wondering what he saw in her that made him smirk like that. She was dressed in her usual work clothes, simple and plain, without the polish of luxury fabrics or fine jewelry. But that day, she felt especially self-conscious. After she handed him his coffee, Carl leaned back in his chair, casually remarking, "Why do they hire people like you here? No offense, but don't they have a dress code?" His voice was loud enough for others around them to hear, and a few patrons glanced over curiously, their expressions varying from shock to sympathy. Amy was mortified. She clenched her jaw, holding back tears, determined not to let his words crush her. Carl's laughter echoed as he picked up his coffee. "You know, someone like you should be used to working these jobs. I suppose it's all you can do, right?" He turned his back on her, amused at his own words, clearly uninterested in her response. In that moment, Amy felt a burning resolve solidify within her. She realized that this job, this life, none of it would define her. She promised herself that she would find a way to change her circumstances, no matter what it took. That night, Amy lay awake, replaying Carl's words over and over in her mind. His sneering tone, the way he looked at her like she was beneath him, struck deep into her soul. The humiliation made her want to shrink away, to disappear into her bed and never return to that cafe. But beneath the embarrassment was an even stronger feeling, a kind of fury she had never felt before. Amy's father noticed her somber expression over breakfast the next morning and asked what was on her mind. She hesitated, not wanting to burden him with her troubles, but eventually, the story spilled out. As she recounted the experience, her father listened quietly, his face a mixture of sadness and pride. He looked at her with eyes full of compassion and took her hand, saying, "Amy, people who judge you for your clothes or job don't see your true worth. It's their loss, not yours. But if you want more, you'll need to work for it." That conversation ignited something in Amy. She realized she had been letting others define her value, and that had to change. She couldn't live her life in fear of what people like Carl thought of her. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she wouldn't have to rely on anyone's approval, a future where she could proudly walk through the world with her head held high. From that day on, Amy began to carve out a plan to transform her life. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was ready for the challenge. Despite her limited resources, she decided to enroll in night classes to study accounting, a field she knew had potential for stable and well-paying jobs. Every dollar she earned from the cafe would now be saved, no matter how much she had to sacrifice. Amy spent her days working long shifts and her evenings in class, struggling to stay awake but determined to keep going. She was exhausted, barely getting enough sleep, but she refused to give up. Every time she felt like quitting, she remembered Carl's smug face, his laughter echoing in her ears, and that memory gave her the strength to push forward. One evening, during her accounting class, Amy caught the attention of Mr. Bowers, an elderly instructor with a keen eye for detail. He was impressed by her diligence and often saw her staying late, reviewing her notes after everyone else had left. Mr. Bowers was a retired financial advisor who occasionally volunteered to teach, and he quickly saw the determination in Amy. Recognizing her potential, Mr. Bowers began mentoring her outside of class hours, teaching her concepts beyond the curriculum and offering her practical advice on navigating the finance industry. Their relationship grew into one of mutual respect, with Mr. Bowers providing not only technical knowledge but life lessons on perseverance and integrity. Amy soaked up every lesson, feeling that, for the first time, someone believed in her dreams. Balancing her cafe job with the demands of her studies was exhausting. Some days, she felt as if the walls were closing in, as if she were on a treadmill that was going too fast. But every time she faltered, she would recall her father's words, and the image of Carl's dismissive smirk would flash in her mind, reigniting her determination. Despite her fatigue, she was making progress in her studies. Her classmates started to notice her commitment, often remarking on how she seemed to be everywhere at once, working tirelessly. They admired her tenacity, though none of them knew the true reasons behind it. The time came for Amy's first major accounting exam, a daunting challenge that left her with sleepless nights leading up to it. She poured every ounce of energy into her preparation, driven by a mixture of anxiety and determination. On the day of the test, she walked into the classroom with her head held high, resolved to give it her all. To her relief and joy, Amy passed with flying colors. The grade was proof that her efforts were paying off, and for the first time, she began to see a real path forward. The feeling of achievement was unlike anything she had experienced before. It gave her a taste of the confidence she'd longed for. Word of her dedication had reached Mr. Bowers' contacts in the finance industry, and soon, an opportunity presented itself. A friend of Mr. Bowers, who managed a well-respected investment firm, had a summer internship available. Mr. Bowers immediately thought of Amy and recommended her for the position. When she received the offer, Amy was elated yet nervous. Working in a professional setting was both exciting and intimidating, but she was ready to step into a new world. She dreamed of an opportunity like this and knew it was her chance to prove herself beyond the classroom. Amy's first day at the firm was overwhelming. The office was modern and sleek, filled with polished professionals who seemed to glide through their work effortlessly. She felt out of place in her second-hand blazer and sensible shoes, conscious of her every movement and unsure if she belonged. However, as the days passed, Amy's confidence grew. Her hard work and dedication were quickly noticed by her supervisor, who praised her attention to detail and willingness to learn. She began to understand the rhythms of the office and adapted to its demands, proving that she was every bit as capable as those around her. As her internship progressed, Amy's reputation in the firm grew. Her colleagues began to see her not just as an intern but as a reliable, hardworking professional. She handled her tasks with skill, often staying late to perfect her work. Her humility and dedication drew admiration from others, even as she continued to feel slightly out of place among those who came from wealthier backgrounds. Despite the praise, Amy never forgot where she came from. Her modest upbringing had shaped her, instilling in her a work ethic and a drive to succeed that nothing could shake. And even though she was making progress, she still remembered Carl's words. One afternoon, Amy was assigned to assist with a new client, a wealthy entrepreneur looking to expand his portfolio. When she entered the meeting room, her heart nearly stopped. Sitting at the head of the table, checking his watch, was Carl. She immediately recognized him, though he didn't seem to recognize her. He looked the same as before, perhaps even more polished, his expression carrying the same air of superiority. Amy took a deep breath, summoning her professionalism. She reminded herself of how far she had come and focused on the task. As she presented her analysis, Carl nodded with approval, unaware of their shared past. Her expertise and calm confidence impressed him, and by the end of the meeting, he complimented her, saying, "You're quite skilled. I didn't expect someone so young to be this knowledgeable." Amy felt a quiet satisfaction, but she wasn't ready to reveal her identity just yet. In the weeks that followed, Amy continued to work closely with Carl on his investments. The more he praised her abilities, the more she found herself feeling a strange sense of vindication. Here she was, the same girl he once mocked, now providing him with financial insights and earning his respect. Carl still didn't seem to recognize her, and she found herself wondering if she should ever tell him who she was. Her patience paid off one afternoon when Carl, unaware of the irony, commented offhandedly, "You know, people should really appreciate the skills of those they work with. You never know where true talent comes from." Amy felt a surge of confidence. This was her moment. She locked eyes with him and, with calm precision, reminded him of their first encounter years before. His stunned expression told her everything, he remembered. Carl was taken aback. He stammered, visibly embarrassed as he processed her words. His face flushed as he realized the weight of his actions all those years ago. I had no idea," he said quietly, struggling to meet her gaze. "I was so arrogant back then. I'm sorry, Amy. I didn't mean to make you feel that way." Amy listened calmly, her heart pounding. She had imagined this moment many times, but now that it was happening, she felt unexpectedly calm. Instead of anger, she felt a deep sense of closure. She told Carl, "Your words hurt, but they also pushed me to become who I am today. So, in a way, I owe you some thanks." She watched as Carl grappled with the unexpected response. In that moment, she knew she had found a strength that went far beyond revenge. From that day on, the dynamic between Amy and Carl shifted. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a shared recognition of the past and the changes it had brought. Carl, now aware of her journey, began to treat her with profound respect, often seeking her input on decisions and acknowledging her insights publicly. Amy felt both pride and humility as she observed his transformation. She hadn't just proven herself, she'd managed to turn an old wound into something powerful. Carl also began to open up to her about his own struggles, admitting that his wealth and success had sometimes led him down empty paths. Amy listened with empathy, offering her own perspective on life's challenges. In a way she had never anticipated, Carl became a friend, a genuine one, no longer the arrogant man she had met in the cafe, but someone striving to grow. Together, they started to collaborate on a much deeper level, each learning from the other. Eventually, the business deal they'd been working on was finalized, bringing significant success to both the firm and Carl's ventures. Carl, grateful for Amy's expertise, organized a celebratory lunch and invited Amy to join him as a guest of honor. He publicly credited her for the project's success, praising her hard work and vision in front of his associates. Amy felt an immense sense of accomplishment as she listened to his words. She had come so far from the girl who once served coffee, barely able to look customers in the eye. Now, she was respected in her field, praised for her capabilities, and recognized by those who had once looked down on her. The feeling of triumph was profound, not because of Carl's approval, but because of the person she had become. After the celebration, Amy returned to the modest home she shared with her father. She had brought him his favorite dessert as a surprise, and they sat together at the small kitchen table, reminiscing about all that had happened. When she told him about her encounter with Carl and the outcome of their business deal, her father's eyes filled with pride. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice steady and warm. "You've always been strong, Amy. Stronger than anyone I've known. I'm so proud of you," he said, his words heavy with emotion. Amy smiled, feeling a warmth she couldn't describe. She realized that every hardship, every late-night studying, and every sacrifice had led her to this moment. Her father's pride meant more to her than any applause she could receive from the world. With her success in the recent project, Amy's firm offered her a promotion. She was now in a higher position, responsible for her own team and overseeing major client accounts. The sense of responsibility was daunting, but she welcomed the challenge. Her new role came with both respect and the opportunity to help others, a chance she didn't take lightly. The first thing Amy did in her new role was to encourage younger employees from underprivileged backgrounds, offering mentorship similar to what she had received from Mr. Bowers. She remembered the impact his guidance had on her, and she was eager to give back in the same way. Helping others now felt like a duty, a way to honor the journey she had taken. Amy's dedication and professionalism quickly garnered attention in the industry. She became known not only for her skills but also for her compassion and ethical approach to business. Colleagues and clients admired her integrity and began to refer other clients to her, knowing they'd be in good hands. People began to seek her out for advice, and she found herself giving interviews, attending conferences, and even mentoring other young professionals. Her once small, uncertain dreams had blossomed into a career that not only supported her family but inspired others to believe in the power of hard work and resilience. One day, Amy received an unexpected call from Carl. His voice sounded different, subdued, almost vulnerable. His company was facing a downturn due to unforeseen circumstances, and he needed advice. Although she felt a pang of past memories resurface, Amy listened intently. She realized that Carl was genuinely seeking her guidance, not out of desperation, but because he respected her insights. The irony was not lost on Amy. Here was the man who had once belittled her, now asking for her help. She decided to assist him, not for any personal gain, but because she understood that real strength came from offering compassion. And in that moment, she felt she had finally outgrown the shadows of the past, embracing a future built on kindness and strength. As they worked together to stabilize his company, Amy and Carl developed a mutual respect that went beyond their professional relationship. Carl frequently expressed gratitude for her help, often marveling at how she had remained grounded and compassionate despite her success. He admitted that he had learned more from her than from any business school or elite mentor. Carl's vulnerability and newfound humility made a deep impression on Amy. She found herself admiring his willingness to grow and change, realizing that sometimes people could transform in ways she'd never expected. By helping Carl, Amy didn't just save his business, she gave him a second chance to find meaning and purpose in his life. One afternoon, during a particularly intense meeting, Carl confessed his regrets over the way he had treated people in his past. "It's strange," he said softly, "to realize how much damage arrogance can do. I've lost people, opportunities, respect, all because I thought I was better than others." Amy listened, touched by his honesty. Seeing him in this light, Amy felt an overwhelming sense of forgiveness. She had carried the weight of his words for so long, but now she felt free. By forgiving him, she found she was able to fully let go of any lingering resentment, replacing it with a sense of peace she hadn't realized she needed. It was the final chapter in a journey she had started years ago, and it brought her a feeling of closure she could never have anticipated. Inspired by her own journey, Amy decided to give back to the community that had once been her home. She established a scholarship fund for students from low-income families, providing them with the opportunity to pursue their dreams without the financial burdens she had faced. She named the fund in honor of her father and her mentor, Mr. Bowers, two people who had shaped her life with their wisdom and support. The scholarship became her way of extending her story to others, ensuring that no one would have to feel limited by their circumstances. As the first recipients of the scholarship were announced, Amy attended the ceremony, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment as she watched young students receive a chance to follow their own dreams. Carl, deeply moved by Amy's support and impressed by her expertise, approached her with an unexpected proposal. He offered her a high-ranking position within his company, a role that would place her among the top executives and give her significant influence over business decisions. "Your vision is what this company needs, Amy," he said, his voice sincere. "You have a way of seeing things that most people overlook. I'd be honored to have you by my side." Amy was taken aback. She had come so far on her own, building a name and a career based on her values. Joining Carl's company would mean leaving her current firm and changing the course of her professional journey. The decision weighed on her, and after taking a few days to consider it, she decided to have a conversation with her father. His quiet strength had always guided her, and she trusted his wisdom deeply. With her father's encouragement, Amy took a walk around the neighborhood where she had spent her early years. Passing by the small cafe where she'd once worked, she felt a flood of memories, the long hours, the exhaustion, and the humiliation she'd endured. Yet, she was also filled with a quiet pride. She had transformed every difficulty into something meaningful. It was here, in this very place, that she had vowed to make a better life for herself. Stepping inside the cafe, Amy ordered a coffee and sat by the window, watching the bustling street outside. She realized that, while accepting Carl's offer might be a significant change, she was no longer the girl who needed to prove herself. Her success and her value didn't depend on anyone else's approval anymore. And with that realization, she felt ready for whatever came next. In her time of reflection, Amy decided to visit Mr. Bowers, her former mentor. She wanted to thank him personally for the support and wisdom he had given her during her early years. Mr. Bowers, now retired and living in a quiet part of town, greeted her warmly, his face lighting up when he saw her. As they sat together over tea, Amy shared her journey since the days of her accounting classes, recounting her rise in the industry. Mr. Bowers listened intently, pride shining in his eyes. "I knew you had it in you," he said with a smile. "What you've achieved, Amy, is remarkable. And I'm not surprised in the slightest." She felt immense gratitude, and together they celebrated how far she had come, acknowledging the power of perseverance and the importance of kindness. Their reunion reminded her that, no matter where she went, her journey would always be grounded in those who had believed in her. As Amy reflected on her journey, she realized that the person she had become was not simply a result of career achievements or professional growth. It was a journey that had strengthened her heart and sharpened her mind, rooted in values she held dear. She saw that her identity was not defined by material success, but by her character and resilience, forged through years of struggle and self-doubt. She understood that her early experiences of humiliation and hardship had become the stepping stones of her personal growth. Though the memories of Carl's harsh words had once haunted her, she now felt an inner peace. By rising above them, she had gained a quiet strength that could never be taken from her. And in this clarity, she saw the beauty of her life, the triumphs and failures, the dreams and disappointments, all as essential parts of her own story. With a renewed sense of purpose, Amy chose to accept Carl's offer, bringing her unique vision and dedication to his company. Her presence quickly transformed the culture within the firm as she fostered an environment of integrity, respect, and collaboration. She introduced new policies to support employees from all backgrounds, ensuring that everyone had a chance to succeed. Amy's leadership attracted attention from across the industry, and her innovative ideas brought significant growth to the company. Her colleagues admired her not only for her skills but also for her unwavering commitment to creating a positive impact. She began to feel that she was exactly where she needed to be, contributing to a legacy that extended beyond profit and success. One day, Amy organized a private ceremony to honor her father, inviting friends, mentors, and those who had been part of her journey. Standing before them, she shared stories of her father's sacrifices and his unwavering belief in her potential. Her voice trembled with emotion as she expressed her gratitude, acknowledging the love and wisdom he had instilled in her. Her father sat in the audience, his eyes misty with pride as he listened. To him, Amy was a living testament to the values he had tried to impart. He knew that her success wasn't measured by titles or wealth, but by the kindness, resilience, and determination she carried. Watching his daughter stand there, respected and admired, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that his legacy would live on through her. With her professional life thriving, Amy felt compelled to give back in an even more meaningful way. She expanded her scholarship fund, creating additional programs for mentoring and skill-building workshops for underprivileged youth. Amy personally met with many of the scholarship recipients, sharing her story and encouraging them to pursue their dreams without fear. Her philanthropic efforts grew, and she soon became known as a community leader and advocate. She was regularly invited to speak at conferences, where she spoke passionately about overcoming adversity and the importance of giving others a hand up. Her impact was no longer confined to a single company or industry. It was spreading into communities far and wide, inspiring young people to see that they, too, could change their own futures. Years later, Amy found herself in a reflective mood, sitting by a window in her office with a view of the city skyline. The memories of her journey, from the small cafe where she had once served coffee to her current life as an influential leader, washed over her. She felt a profound gratitude for each step, each struggle, and each moment of triumph that had brought her to this place. Her life had come full circle. What began as a dream to escape poverty had blossomed into something far greater than she could have imagined. She had built a life filled with meaning, driven by purpose, and fueled by compassion. As she watched the city lights twinkle in the distance, Amy felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. She had become not only successful but also deeply happy, knowing she had created a legacy of hope, strength, and inspiration for generations to come. And as the sun set on another day, Amy knew that her story was far from over. Her journey would live on, in the lives she touched, the dreams she inspired, and the love she shared with the world.